Since we live in such a globalised world these days, it should come as no surprise that a large number of footballers are eligible to represent multiple national teams on the grounds of FIFA's eligibility rules. Oftentimes, when a player has the choice of representing multiple national teams, they will pick the one that gives them the best chance of reaching major tournaments, winning trophies, and maximising their commercial revenue. So, Fikayo Tomori picked England ahead of Canada or Nigeria, Samuel Umtiti picked France over Cameroon, and Christian Pulisic chose Italy over Australia. There are also examples of players picking the national team that they think they have the best shot of playing for regularly, such as Wilfried Zaha, representing the Ivory Coast due to England opportunities being at a premium, Marlos playing for Ukraine rather than Brazil, and the countless players who choose to represent Wales, Scotland, or either of the Irish national teams over England. Both of those scenarios are relatively common, but what is rarer is for a player to represent a lesser national team who is good enough and eligible to play for a better one. Subscriber Tree Kangaroo has requested that I take a look at examples of such players a few times though, so today I'm taking on his challenge. It should be noted that there are more than 7 examples, so for instance, both Lionel Messi and Sergio Aguero could have represented Spain, who are a stronger national team than Argentina right now, based upon the FIFA World Rankings. So these are just 7 examples that I've picked out for today's video. Here are 7 footballers who could have represented better national teams. Alfonzo Davies. There seems to be some confusion about which national teams Alfonzo Davies could have represented, so I'd be happy to clear that up for you all today. Davies could have represented Liberia because that is where his parents are from, he could have represented Ghana because that is where he was born in a refugee camp, and he could have represented Canada since that is where he grew up and gained citizenship a few years ago. Of the 3 national teams, Davies represents the middle ranked one, Canada, who come in below Ghana in the FIFA World Rankings, but above Liberia. Davies could have been Liberia's greatest player since their current president, or the best current Ghanaian international, but given the fact that he grew up in Canada, his decision to represent the Canucks makes perfect sense. Canada are ranked 72nd in the FIFA World Rankings, well below 48th place Ghana, although that could be all about to change. Whilst Davies is the star man, Canada have a handful of talented young players at their disposal right now, who'll be hoping to qualify for their first World Cup since 1986 before long. Canada could actually be given automatic qualification for the 2026 World Cup as joint hosts, but that decision is yet to be taken by FIFA. Davies has already won 17 caps for Canada and he has scored 5 international goals, having recently turned 20. By the time he retires, it's quite possible that he'll be Canada's most capped player of all time, although Jonathan David might prevent him from becoming the nation's all-time top scorer. Miroslav Pjanic. The most questionable inclusion in this 7 perhaps, Miroslav Pjanic could have represented France, but whether he would get in the France team right now is up for debate. Nonetheless, I suspect that if Pjanic had chosen to represent France, he would have won half a century of caps and been an almost permanent fixture in their squad over the last 10 years. Like Davies, Pjanic was a child refugee and his family fled modern-day Bosnia, then Yugoslavia, when he was only 2 or 3 years old. They relocated to Luxembourg, and Pjanic went on to represent Luxembourg at under 17 and under 19 level. When he was 18 years old, shortly after he'd signed for Lyon, Pjanic was approached by the French Football Federation about representing France. In his own words, Pjanic said, "Sportingly speaking, it would have been the best thing to do." However, he already had his heart set upon representing Bosnia and Herzegovina. It took an 8-month wait before Pjanic was given a Bosnian passport and clearance to represent the nation of his birth, but he has since won 95 caps and played a key role in Bosnia reaching the World Cup for the first time. Had he chosen to represent France, Pjanic may have fewer caps, but he'd probably have a World Cup to his name and perhaps even a Euros had he been able to help them to victory in the final in 2016. Bosnia are ranked 51st in the world, while France occupies 2nd place. Erling Haaland. I think it's a fairly well-known fact that Erling Harland was born in England, along with his Dortmund teammate Giovanni Reina, but he is a worthy inclusion nonetheless. Haaland's father played for Leeds when Erling was born, hence why he was born in England, but they moved to Norway when Erling was 3 due to Alf Inger's career being cut short. Haaland has stated that he supports Leeds and that it is his dream to win the Premier League with them, but he perhaps didn't anticipate the fact that he'd be one of the most prolific marksmen in European football by the age of 20 when he made that claim. Haaland has been part of Norway's youth setup since the age of 14 and he made his senior debut in 2019. Norway are ranked 43rd in the world right now, whilst England are ranked 4th. But a little like Canada, Norway have a really exciting group of young players at the moment. Had Haaland chosen to represent England rather than Norway, which never seemed likely, Gareth Southgate would have a real selection headache on his hands. He already has a plethora of attacking talent, from Sterling and Sancho to Rashford and Kane, and how he would accommodate Kane and Haaland in particular, I am not quite sure. Having said that, there are worse problems to have, and in case of an injury to Kane, you wouldn't mind having Haaland waiting in the wings. The 20-year-old, who has scored 27 goals in 29 games for Borussia Dortmund since signing for the Bundesliga Giants, has scored 6 goals from his last 3 caps for Norway, and he should overtake Jørgen Juve's record as Norway's all-time record scorer at some stage, which is a record that has stood for more than 80 years. Christian Pulisic. Christian Pulisic represents the USMNT, or United States men's national team, meaning he represents the highest ranked national team in this 7. The US currently rank 22nd in the FIFA World Rankings, ahead of Ukraine, Peru, and Austria. However, the other national team that Pulisic could have represented, Croatia, are ranked among the FIFA World Rankings top 10, ahead of Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands. As I said in the introduction, one of the reasons why a player may choose to represent a stronger national team is due to commercial revenue and advertising appeal. Conversely, in the case of Pulisic though, whilst Croatia may have a better team than the United States, being a starman for the USMNT is a far more lucrative business than being a starman for Croatia. Pulisic's grandfather was born in Croatia, hence the family surname, and Pulisic was apparently approached by Croatia at one stage. Had he chosen to represent the Europeans, he may well have a World Cup final under his belt, whereas the US failed to even qualify for the same tournament. Pulisic only ever had eyes on representing the USMNT though, having been born and raised in Pennsylvania. At the age of 22, he has already won 34 caps and scored 14 goals for the USA, and he is the most expensive North American footballer of all time. Riyad Mahrez. There are plenty of brilliant players who were either born in France or could have represented France for another reason, but chose to represent other national teams, such as Kalidou Koulibaly, Mehdi Benatia, and Nicolas Pepe. I limited myself to only 2 in my final 7, the first of which is Riyad Mahrez. Mahrez had the option of representing Algeria, Morocco or France, having been born and raised in France to an Algerian father and an Algerian-Moroccan mother. One suspects that when Mahrez made the decision to represent Algeria in 2014, aged 23, and playing in the Championship with Leicester City, he wasn't holding out too much hope of ever winning a senior cap for France. However, within months, he'd won promotion to the Premier League, and in only his 2nd season in the top flight, Mahrez played a pivotal role in bringing the Premier League title to the King Power Stadium against all the odds. At that stage, he almost certainly would have received a call-up from France, were it not for the fact that he'd already won 25 caps for Algeria and represented the country at a World Cup. France do have a fine array of talent in wide areas, but Mahrez would be a regular inclusion in their squad and a solid candidate to start had he chosen to represent them, I suspect. Hakim Ziyech. Similarly to Riyad Mahrez, when Hakim Ziyech took the decision to represent a lower-ranked national team, he possibly didn't think his chances of becoming a regular for the nation of his birth were all that high. Ziyech was born in the Netherlands, but qualified to represent Morocco through his parents. Whilst playing for Heerenveen, Ziyech represented the Netherlands at under 19, 20 and 21 level, and he was even called up to the senior team in 2015. However, the Netherlands had reached the World Cup semi-finals only 12 months earlier, and Ziyech had competition from the likes of Wesley Sneijder, Memphis Depay and Arjen Robben in attacking midfield and wide areas. Having gone uncapped despite his call-up, in September 2015, Ziyech took the decision to represent Morocco instead, and he made his debut the following month. Fast forward just a few years, and Ziyech had become one of the outstanding players in the Eredivisie. The Netherlands had failed to qualify for consecutive major tournaments, and they were crying out for some creativity. I suspect that had Ziyech waited it out, he'd be a Netherlands regular by now. Instead, he has won 33 caps for Morocco, a nation ranked 39th in the FIFA World Rankings, meanwhile the Netherlands are ranked 15th. Pierre Emerick Aubameyang. I said I was only going to include 2 players from France, and the second one takes top spot, although the 7 is in no particular order. Pierre Emerick Aubameyang was born in the town of Laval to a Gabonese father and former Gabon international and a Spanish mother. As a result, Aubameyang could have represented France, Gabon or Spain. that is to say, 2 World Cup winning national teams, or one that has never even qualified for the World Cup and whose previous best ever player was probably Daniel Kuzan. Aubameyang chose to follow in the footsteps of his father, who had captained the Gabon national team, sacrificing his chances of winning anything at international level in the process. He then made a similar decision at club level in January 2018 when he signed for Arsenal. I'm only kidding, Arsenal fans. Aubameyang has of course already won multiple trophies at the Emirates, the FA Cup and the Community Shield. Now, when Aubameyang chose to represent Gabon, he was playing in France's second tier with Dijon. Whether he would have made the same decision had he known that he was going to become a remarkably prolific goalscorer in both the Bundesliga and in the Premier League, perhaps he would have held off on that decision. Certainly, Spain have been crying out for a centre-forward of Aubameyang's pedigree for the last 6 or 7 years, and whilst France do have a fine array of attacking talent, I don't think they'd turn down the chance to add Aubameyang to their ranks. Ultimately, the 31-year-old picked Gabon though, becoming the country's all-time greatest player and top scorer with 25 goals from 63 caps, which incidentally is actually worse than his goal-scoring record at club level. So that is it for today's video, but thank you all very much as ever for watching. Do give us a like if you enjoyed the video, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and make sure that you are subscribed to HITC Sevens and have notifications turned on. As ever, you can also follow me on either Twitter or Instagram, where the username is just @HITC Sevens on both.